Welcome, Third Rock listeners, to the Branding Laboratory. I'm your host, Deevo, Chief Experience Officer for the brand Storyteller and the Fusion Creative Brands. And each week, I have the privilege of speaking with extraordinary leaders and entrepreneurs who are reshaping the way industries work. These conversations go way beyond the surface to explore the core philosophies, the lessons, and the challenges that define the brands that we admire today. And one of the greatest rewards of this podcast is the opportunity to share the insights of some of the brightest minds in business, people who are passionate about pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. And as I always say, the stories we tell are the brands we build. And this show is a testament to the power of that concept. Let's dive in. Today, for the episode of Branding Laboratory, I'm going to dive into the wild, innovative mind of West Stringfellow. I love saying that name. He is an innovation powerhouse, to say the least, and he has, in his corporate career, led companies and worked at a very high level for Amazon, PayPal, Target, just to name a few, and a plethora of others, and helping them through major transformations using his cutting-edge technology, his innovative approach to things, his way of problem solving. He's got some really cool stories on how he was sitting in a bar and happened to be put in touch with the president from Visa, overheard a conversation and ended up connecting him with somebody else, and he ended up working for 6 months for Visa at a very high level. He sold a company to Target, one of his AI solutions. We're talked a lot of different things on this conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you. And it wasn't just technology. We talked about innovation and his personal philosophies and his approach to life. And we even got into some like patriotism, which I was like, where is he going with this? But he's brought it around full circle. So anyway, really cool dude, really cool conversation. One of my favorite guests so far. And no, I don't say that about everybody. And I really am excited to share this episode with you. So sit back, relax, and thank you for joining the Branding Laboratory. Yes, all right, today we're going to dive into the mind of West Stringfellow. Cool name, by the way. I just want to say that a few times over and over. Stringfellow, West Stringfellow. He's an innovation powerhouse who has led companies like Amazon, PayPal, Target. I'm actually going to Target later on today to pick up my new optical frames. I love using their optical store. Anyway, he's helped them through some major transformation using a cutting-edge technology and a bunch of other things that we're going to talk about. And I want to learn a little bit more about that space, because I just had a really cool podcast with an AI dude that has built like this innovative app that kind of integrates with your customer service module. So it's really cool. Anyway, we're not just going to talk about technology. For those of you who just turned in to hear AI, there's going to be more. I want to talk a little bit about West Stringfellow's core philosophies and how he has shaped his trajectory of his career and all the things he's doing, and leave you listeners, with some takeaways that you can potentially implement into your business to do some cool shit just like West has. So he is the founder and CEO now of How Do. Is that right? Did I get that correct?
That's right.
And his career is now going on over 2 decades, leading innovations at Fortune 500 companies. I talked about Amazon, PayPal, and helping startups. And he's got a bunch of really cool success stories. And you were doing a bunch of consulting for Target. I think you're not doing that anymore. Is that correct? You're doing your own thing. Is that right?
That's right. They bought my company and then they made me the VP of innovation.
That's what I thought. So cool. Anyhow, welcome to the Branding Laboratory, Wes. I'm really excited to dive into your story and just hear your insights and wisdom on how I can become a better CEO just like you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Deevo. I'm stoked to be here.
So you've got a pretty cool journey, man, from leading these massive innovation transformations at Fortune 500 companies. That's a big deal. To launching and selling your own startups. That's a big deal. I'd love to hear that exit strategy, or if that was just accidental. Tell me, what initially drew you into this sort of world of technology and innovation, and how did that spark evolve into launching this entrepreneurial business of How Do?
Yeah, it started in 97. I was in college. I needed to work full time, and I was a legal intern, and I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And they kept losing files all the time. At the same time, I was work study at the Norland Library, which is the campus library. And students who were various states of drunk and asleep would be able to return books, but lawyers who have like master's degrees couldn't return files. And I'm like, there's something missing here. What is it? And so I went over to the head librarian and I was like, how do the students bring the book back, but the lawyers can't bring the files back? And she was like, oh, we have this thing called an LMS. And it's just a basic database. And if you didn't bring the book back, it sends you a little note, or you get like a text and it's, hey, come bring your thing back. And yeah, I actually just built them in LMS using Access, which at the time, there was no internet as it is today. So the librarian gave me a book on Microsoft Access, and I read it, and I went to the law firm and said, "Hey, can I build you a database that tracks your files?" And so my job as an intern was to run around Denver in a suit in 100-degree weather and find the file. So I'd go to the restaurant, to the car, to their house. Like that was it. And once I built this LMS, I became a paid consultant. I went from unpaid sweaty intern to paid computer consultant in an air conditioned office. And I was like, this is a much better job. I want to stay with technology. And so every company that I went to after that, I had a series of internships at technology companies. And back then, everyone was bad at technology. No one was really good at it. So I could be pretty mediocre and go far. And joined a couple startups, solved some of their problems, and then ended up developing a specialty in book metadata, which was like a pretty strange thing to have at the time. But one of the first startups I worked for was NetLibrary, and they were digitizing books. And then later I worked for Libris, and they were another startup that was selling used books. And then Amazon wanted to grow their book marketplace, and Jeff Bezos loves books. That's why he started Amazon. And so there were only a couple people who really understood book metadata, and I was one of them. And when they had launched their marketplace, and when we integrated with them as a seller on the marketplace, we were actually one of the largest sellers at the time. We had over 40 million listings. And that was very big for Amazon's marketplace. The way they integrated, I thought would cause some problems. And so I helped them understand what I thought was going to happen. They didn't agree, but ultimately, as we scaled our account, those problems came to life. And they called and they said, "Hey, come up and explain how to fix it." And I went up, and that explanation ended up being a job interview. And so I joined Amazon. And that's when I decided, holy cow, not two things. Number one, technology has some real upside. Up in between 97 and 2004, when I joined Amazon, I was a database administrator, like in the back end of the office, just doing tons and tons of data work. And then when I got to Amazon, it was the first time that I worked for a company that really valued data. They were like, the more you understand data, the more you understand how to move data, the better you can run the business at Amazon, because that's all it is, bunch of data. And the second thing that I learned was that I'm terrible at engineering. Like getting to Amazon, I got to meet actual engineers, and I was like, wow, I'm never going to be this good. And so I retrenched into the business side of engineering, which is product management. And I was a product manager at Amazon. I helped them launch their first billable web service, which was the foundation of AWS. I launched their digital video product, which I was a product manager on the launch for that, which was Amazon Prime Video. And
Let me stop you there because you got a lot of things I need to unpack, and my memory is not as good as yours. So I'm going to unpack a few things for you. So first thing I want to touch on the sweaty suit thing. I'm originally from California, and one of the projects you mentioned that people were really shitty at technology in that 97 to 2004 range. I had a similar story to yours, and I was charged with bringing an old mainframe system up into the digital world, which at that time was basically just putting people on laptops. But anyhow, a funny story is one of the projects I was charged with is basically I had to travel the country where we had regional satellite offices, and I always had to wear a suit, which I fucking hate suits.
yeah.
But I was in like deep south, like Jackson, Mississippi, Alabama,
Oh,
Tuscaloosa, walking around. And so the company that I worked for at the time, straight out of college, it was Bank of America, but they bought this division out in California, and they serviced what their portfolio was is they serviced mobile home portfolios.
okay.
So repossessions, servicing, origination, loan origination, et cetera. And we had this fleet of field reps that were servicing these mobile homes, but they were like literally on piece of paper and pen. And so I was charged with bringing them up in the digital age, which was like we got GPS systems equipped in their cars and tablet PCs and all this stuff. But my point in my long story is I had to wear a suit like all day long out in bumfuck South, walking around with these agents. Dude, I just remember thinking, because like sweat everywhere 24/7.
Yes.
And I just remember thinking, this is
Yes.
the worst thing ever. So I really appreciate that sweaty reference you made. The other thing I heard you say is, I loved how you made actually, let me back up. These opportunities that you had, Amazon, Target, all these different things that you did, were you in the right place at the right time, or are you more of a creature of opportunity and you saw an opportunity and you're like, I'm going to come up with a solution for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I learned at first, I was working construction, and I was building trails in the mountain parks in Colorado before I got that law firm job. And I got injured so much, like so hard. I cut my thumb off. I got like severe concussion, like doing construction. And so I was so stoked to be someplace where it was just like air conditioned temporarily and safe. And then when I learned that I could make money by solving problems in the office, I was like, oh, this is crazy. So I went from unpaid intern to paid person to sit by a computer. I was like, this is way easy. And so then every office I went into, I would look for the biggest problem in my job. So the next job, next internship I had, I back before Zoom, I was a call operator for multi-point video conference calls. So if you had three people talking on a video conference, I'd be sitting in the middle and literally plugging in cables into these big boxes to try and get your video conference machines to work across the world. And I had to go to work at literally 2 in the morning so that I could do work and then go to class. But sitting there, I spent 80% of my time after I did all the cables just writing documentation around like the call. And I was like, this is such a waste of time. Like we could be doing other things with our time than filling out this paperwork. So like you, I made a paperless call center, like taking the paper and putting it into digital. And again, I went from being just like an intern call operator to having a job. And every time that
Because you were looking for a solution to a,
yeah, anything that I could solve, anything
yeah.
that I could solve. And so when I got to Target, one of the things right before I went to Target, I did is I ran around the office of the startup I worked at, and I was like, what sucks about Amazon? Like,
Mm.
what if you could fix anything at Amazon, what would it be?
Now, and
And
these
so
are, I'm sorry, who are you asking these questions of?
this was so I worked at a company called Alibris. They integrated with Amazon and they sold used books on Amazon's marketplace.
So when
And
you're asking what sucks about Amazon, who are you asking
at
this question?
Alibris,
Got it.
at
Okay.
Alibris, because they were getting ready to be my customer.
Got it.
I was getting ready to go from working for them to managing their account.
Got it.
And I learned like all these things that people wanted. And then I also wrote down the things that I wish I had as the account manager on Amazon. And when I got there, I just started shopping around this list of stuff that I thought we could fix. And one of those things was ended up being the requirements for Amazon's first billable web service. So it's just, and then same with to fast forward to Target, I had spent 5 years developing an idea, studying the customers, studying the market, studying the tech, just to really validate it. And the idea was simple. It was, we had all in 2012, 13, you had tons of people on Instagram and they were trying to sell stuff. And then you had marketplaces like Amazon, Etsy, eBay, and they weren't linked to Instagram. And I talked to a lot of Instagram influencers, literally just reached out to them and said, hey, can I ask you some questions? And I was like, why aren't you selling stuff on Instagram? Why aren't you like, how is your conversion rate when you're trying to click through Instagram to go elsewhere? It was terrible. And yet brands were spending billions of dollars a year on social media marketing and they couldn't sell anything. So from my background in retail, I called a couple customers, people who ended up being customers, but merchants, people selling things. And I was like, hey, I see you advertising on social media. What's your conversion rate? And they're like, we don't know. And that's crazy in digital advertising to sell something and not know if, or buy advertising and not know if it's selling. So to me, I saw two things. Number one, the Instagram influencers were disconnected from their ability to sell. And then number two, the people who are trying to monetize the Instagram influencers' influence, the people who are paying for social media marketing, had no visibility. And I thought, okay, I could increase the monetization for the influencer, and I could increase the efficiency of the advertising spend for the merchant by building a platform that combined both of them. And so I designed that and then patented it and then started shopping it around, and it ended up being a very quick conversation.
And what is this software? I'm sorry, that you're referencing?
That was the thing that Target bought.
That's the thing. So now Target owns the proprietary rights to it. So they're just using it internally, or is this something that they're outsourcing?
I can't talk about that.
Oh, we got the gag order, the gag order. There's a couple of things I want to touch on that you talked about. First of all, I'm going to work top to bottom. You talked about how this tool you built that Target bought that we can't talk about, the tool that has no name, that you were solving a problem on both sides of the equation, which is phenomenal, by the way. But you said something that really jumped out at me. And I hear this all the time when I'm working with my clients is they're like, oh, we just want to go into paid advertising. We just want to go do this. And I'm like, why do you want to do that? Well, because somebody told me it worked, or I somebody else over here doing this. And I was like, dude, that's just like a knee-jerk response. We have to customize something for you that's going to work for you and your audience. And one of the things you said, I really love, by the way, you've dropped a few nuggets, and I just want to break those down for those of you who did not hear them. you really talked about something where you said, you didn't say this, but perception is reality. And instead of just presenting your view of the world to your consumer and just hoping they'll take it on, you took at it from a different, you re-engineered that and said, okay, what are the problems? How does Amazon suck? And you looked at it from because Amazon can only see what they can only see because they're inside their jar, right? Nobody can read their label outside the jar. So you were like, okay, let me take an outside bird's eye view of the situation and see what does the consumer think about this. And I tell my clients this all the time. If you have a solution that you think is phenomenal, it's only phenomenal to you until you've gotten feedback from the person who you expect to use it. So you've got to look at their perception. What do they think about the product? It's really important to get this in the hands of people, to test it, to play with it, to break it, all the things, so that you understand what works and what doesn't. So well done. In terms of these, I want to switch gears for a second because I could talk to you for 4.5 hours. You've launched some really groundbreaking products, and this is well done. Again, the whole idea is I have this rock on my desk that says, "What problem do you solve?" And I look at this every day.
Yes.
This is a really cool
That's
rock
good.
I found at the beach, and everything I think about, I'm like, "What problem do you solve?" Okay, so why are you starting this new business? Why did you build this software? Why did you wear a sweaty suit for 10 hours a day? Like, why? What problems do you solve? And then how can you get that in the hands of somebody who will pay you to solve
Yep.
their problem for them? So you've launched these really cool products at Amazon, PayPal. What do you think was the turning point that, besides for selling your company for millions of dollars, what was a more of an esoteric philosophical question here? What was the turning point that made you pivot from staying in this corporate world to going back into this like private world of yours? Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I for a long time have really believed that the best test of an entrepreneur is their ability to make it on their own. And I had been able to build some very big things in big companies, but I had, when I say like there's an incredible team around me there. There's an incredible brand that pre-existed. There's incredible foundational technology. There's exceptional amounts of capital, tons of customers at Amazon, PayPal, Target, Visa, Rosetta Stone, like all
Mm-hmm.
those companies that I got to build new things at, those were all in place. And so after 20 years of doing that, I was like, I want to totally do this on my own, like with my own capital, with my own time, see if I can make it. Because the first time I tried to be an entrepreneur, it was very quick. And whenever you, in my experience, I think in a lot of entrepreneurs' experience, when you take capital, when we take capital as entrepreneurs, we are hiring our own boss.
Mm-hmm.
Make no mistake. The second you get a venture capitalist, the second someone buys your company, you have just hired a boss. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not complaining about my experience at Target at all, but it's different experience for me viscerally, waking up in the morning, like how I feel emotionally about my work, what gets me excited, my ability to focus on my mission and not give a shit about anything else. That is so much clearer when I am doing it on my own. And so I was really lucky that I was right place, right time with the right pitch and the right preparation. I'd spent 3 years working on that concept. And when I pulled together the pitch, I talked to 10 people, failed every time. And every time I talked to them, I made it better, better, better. And then one of those people I talked to was like, "Hey, Target was just here. They're looking for people like you. You might want to talk to them." And I talked to, I, in Fast
I don't
Company,
think that's luck, Wes. I think that's purpose-driven innovation. You saw a problem that you set out to solve, and through iterative work, you put yourself in the right place at the right time. I don't know. Again, there is probably some serendipitous things, but serendipitous because you laid the groundwork to get to that point is what I would imagine. I would imagine in my mind's eye how I see it.
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And I think that's true.
Thank you for
But
being
here's,
humble, though.
yeah, but I see, I love solving problems. Like for me, and that's one of the big reasons I built How Do, right? It's just fun to use technology to solve problems. And after I sold my thing to Target, I was like, dude, I want to share this vibe, this like stoke that I have every day with
Mm.
everyone else. And so I created How to open source what I learned so that everyone can de-risk it. Because you mentioned earlier, working backwards from the customer. Like I stumbled upon that. I didn't know what I was doing. I was fixing my problems and that was easy, right? Like I
Mm.
didn't like these stupid things about my job. So I would fix it, made my job better, easy.
Mm.
When I got to Amazon, what they taught me is, hey, dude, what you're doing, that's called working backwards from the customer. So while you're at Amazon, I don't want to hear about you. I don't give a shit about you. I give a shit about the customer. You go figure out what they want. You come back and tell us how if we solve their problems, our business grows, and I will give you money. And it's crazy that they did that. So like I went out and figured out customer problems. I came back and I said, hey, if we solve these problems, I think we can make more money. They taught me how to build business cases around that and use data to justify my thinking. And then they would give me millions of dollars and we would go build stuff and it would make them more money. And they're like, all right, now here's more money. Go do it again. And then
Amazing.
so when I went to Visa, Target, PayPal, et cetera, like I'd walk in there and I'd be like, I want to learn. So for example, I got hired at Visa as a consultant, 90-day contract.
Wait, let me stop you for that minute. So
Yeah,
Amazon, in order of chronology, Amazon was your first big like contract gig, if you will. And would you say that because you had that reputation for what you've done at Amazon, that is what enabled you to get your foot in the door over these other companies? Is that sort of how it
yeah.
worked? Or did you
It's
know
funny.
people? Like, how did that kind of play itself out?
It's funny, man, because today everyone thinks of Amazon as like Amazon. But in like 2004, everyone thought I was a fool. They were like, the dot-com bubble just burst. They've never made any money. They sell books. Why
Yeah,
would you go sell books? I was already selling books. So I'm like, because I like books. And so
I
like
can
I
see
went
that
there.
behind you. So do I.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I went there and there wasn't the reputation. And even in 2000, it was like 2008, 7, when I joined Visa, no, they still didn't have that like Amazon reputation. I got into Visa because I was at a dinner and at that dinner, I was complaining about how Visa required people to authenticate using this arcane technology. And I had thought that they could use machine learning, which is a subset of AI. But I was like, I don't know why you're not using machine learning. Like, why are you putting all this work on the customer? The machine can do so much work so much faster. Customer takes several minutes, machine takes several hundred milliseconds.
Yeah.
And I was animated and vocal in my conversation in London. This was like at 7 p.m. and we had been having beers since 4. And it just turns out that the head of fraud was at the table. And we were in the place where we were meeting was about a couple blocks from where Visa's headquarters were. And so the CEO of Visa Europe came over and was like listening to me go off on this. And it was a long, because I was explaining to them, I'm like, this is how passive authentication works. This is how machine learning works. I don't know why you're not doing this. And then they were like, hey, why don't you come to Visa and explain that to us? And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I built a pitch. I was like, all right, this is how you should be. And I didn't have any design. I didn't think, I was literally like trying to solve the problem for Amazon because my job sucked because their technology sucked. And so I was like, this is how you should fix your system. This is what, if I were you, this is how I would be using your data. It's going to improve your customer experience, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of that conversation, they were like, come do that.
Mm.
Come do that for us. And so I came on a 90-day contract where I could just figure out how things worked. And on day 90, they were like, you run innovation for Europe now. You're the VP of
It's
innovation for
amazing.
Europe. Yeah.
Amazing. So my takeaway from all of that, again, you said serendipitous, right place at the right time. But had you not put in the work ahead of that in terms of acquiring the knowledge, understanding what problem you specifically can solve for an organization or for a consumer or whatever, you would have never been able to be in that position in the first place to have that conversation. But again, I had a guy I was talking to yesterday. He's 27 years old and he's like a multi-billionaire. True story.
Wow.
Yeah, like insane. He started off in day trading and then he built a chat bot or a trading bot that he proprietized that would then do his trading for him on a much faster cycle, like you said, milliseconds versus hours and minutes. Anyway, long story short, when I was asking him about his core philosophies, you have to find the time and the place that you can inject yourself into at all times where you can have conversations with people that would open up opportunities and doors for you. But you have to know your shit. Like you can't just show up. Like you have to have some value that you bring to the table. And I was like, dude, fucking high five because if there's like for real, like if you think about the most successful people in the world and yourself included now, it's you found a problem that you could solve and you put yourself by your work, by your dedication, by your commitment, by your innovation, whatever you want to call the buzzwords that are, and you put yourself in that situation so that you're capable of solving that problem for somebody else. And I think it's just phenomenal. So high five to yourself. But I want to talk about your how do for a minute. So you started this business and tell us a little bit about what how do does in a high level. What exactly what problems does it solve for people and how can is it just this is public software that we can access? Give me the 411.
Yeah, so I ended up getting pulled into Rosetta Stone to help them do a transformation from CD product to digital product. And I learned a lot about digital education there, and it became a passion of mine to figure out how we can use digital education to unlock entrepreneurialism in America. I think that that's how we redevelop a foundational middle class. I think the middle class is what is going to reunite our country, and I think we need to get that done.
Amen, brother.
And
Amen.
so I was like, when I was at Target, one of the things that kind of So they bought my company and I was the CEO of my company. At the same time, I was the VP of innovation responsible for transformation for the company. And while I was doing that, I thought we should have a startup accelerator because I could accelerate a lot of strategic things for Target. So I built a Techstars accelerator. So I've got three things cooking at once. And what I realized while I was doing that is that my key insight was what I'm doing as the CEO of my startup, what I'm doing to accelerate $77 billion in revenue, and what I'm doing to try to get startups from 0 to 1 is effectively the same thing. There are different flavors, but it's effectively the same thing, same process, same mindset, same steps. And so when I got the chance after Target, I just sat down and wrote out what I thought was based on everything that I've ever experienced going 0 to 1 or transforming or launching, whatever, what I thought the key pillars were. And then I hired hundreds of management consultants and professors and teachers and experts to come and I know that I only know this tiny little bit. And so I had them fill in the rest of it. And then I simplified that down into a series of 22 master classes that I gave away for free. And then over the last 6 years, I've been testing those master classes with thousands of people. Currently, about 400,000 people from 133 countries have used the classes, and they've been translated into 7 languages and are textbooks in 5 countries. But like the point of all of that is to try to figure out to get enough information to start to automate it. Because it's standardized and because at this point I've proven that it works enough at scale, my goal is to try and create technology systems so that we can empower all Americans with a simple interface so that they can ask the questions that they need. How do I, whatever it is, and then get the answers they need to make progress in their business. Because the thing that I have seen that holds businesses back is the ability to move from insight to action. And to move from insight to action, you have to have that insight. What is the most valuable number that is important to me right now? What is the most valuable customer problem? What is the most valuable competitive note? Whatever it is. And then you have to know what the action is and how to take it. And so my goal with How Do is to automate that cybernetic loop so that every entrepreneur in America has a friend and coach or ally or whatever in their pocket and they can pull it out and just go.
Insight to action. So what are the steps in between insight to action that this software is solving for them? It's giving them research, it's giving them data that is backed by the 400,000 people that have contributed to it. What's the difference between How Do and ChatGPT, for example, now, or all the other AI mechanisms that are being launched? What's the difference between what How Do does versus, let's just say, ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to figure out. So I was building using natural language NLP and NLG, which are different machine learning variations than LLMs. So LLMs are, which ChatGPT is, use the standardized, that's literally just like a statistical model. And they say, all right, what do we think the next phoneme or the next syllable or the next word is based upon your input tokenized sentence, right? So it takes your sentence, tokenizes it, and then thinks, based on everything we've learned from everything everyone said, what's the next thing? Now, it's great for ideation. It's great for coming up with new ideas, but those ideas, if you look at a bell curve, those ideas are pretty much smack in the middle. And growth does not occur from normalized distribution of business behavior. If everyone did the same thing all the time, we would not have growth. We would have average. And growth comes from exceptional behavior. And so what I'm trying to do and what I've tried to do with the research that we've done is evoke what produces exceptional results.
So
And
radicalized results, in a word.
yeah, why is Visa grown double digits for 65 years? Why is Amazon still one of the most valuable companies in the world? And you look at their multiple, it's still one of the highest in the world. There are things that you can do strategically with your technology capital and customers that position you for long-term growth. And I want to try to create the ability for people to access that. So my hypothesis on the technology was wrong. I was using NLP, NLG. Hyperscaling LLMs was not even a thought on any scientific paper until GPT-3 came out. And then everyone was like, oh, wow, that's radically proficient. So for the last 2 years, we've been testing LLMs and I can't get it to be accurate. I can't get it to be precise, which is even more important for business. So what we're trying to do right now, we haven't solved the problem. We're still working on it. That's why I open source the training, because it's like, all right, we can't wait for technology to get precise enough. Now, if I was in Amazon,
Wait, I need to go back to that. I need to go back to that because I don't think I understand that. Open source to training, that would mean, sorry, break this down for me. That would mean that other programmers or other contributors would have access to how do and its algorithm and how it works in order to contribute that to make it more efficient? Is that what that means?
So I've open sourced the fundamental business logic and the fundamental steps that everyone needs to take to do what How Do can as a system. So if someone has the patience to read, they can do exactly what the system will do in the future. And that's true with GPT, right? All GPT is a summarization. Sorry, all GPT produces is a statistically average summarization of what's been written. That's all GPT is. Now, if you want to read How Do, and you'll get everything that the algorithm will ever be able to produce, because the algorithm's not going to come up with superhuman intelligence, not for a while. All it's going to do is reproduce what we know. And the challenge that I found with most entrepreneurs is they don't have the time to read or the desire to read. It's not their natural state. They'd much rather get shit done. And my original course was like 2,000 pages, literally written. People were like, "Yeah, fuck that, I'm not reading it." So I made it into PowerPoints, and now we have 1,000 PowerPoints, which you could easily flip through. 1,000 pages of PowerPoints and 22 courses, which you could easily flip through. Those that do, I had a dude who graduated from Wharton as an MBA. He said he learned more from How Do than he did from Wharton. So good. But it's still not perfect because there's a huge percentage of the population that doesn't have the time to read it. And even if they do have the time to read it, it's hard to remember what you read and then apply it. And so
Yeah.
I want to get it down to the contextually specific advice. And that's one of the reasons I open sourced it. I think it's more important that people build the solution than I control the solution. Like we
Mm-hmm.
as a country need to make progress. And so I'm just trying to expose everything that I have. If someone has a better way of delivering it, let's go. And then for me, I'm still trying to crack the technical problem because I think that's where the big value is.
That's an interesting conundrum because as an entrepreneur, I love information. I just love learning. Like every opportunity that's one of the reasons I do this podcast is so I can learn from people like you and just share this wisdom. I just finished reading a book called Brevity, Smart Brevity. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's former New York Times, Chicago Tribune contributors or writing authors for them. And they, like you, realize that people have too much information thrown at them on a regular basis now, and they can't consume this information, nor do they have the time to do it. But most importantly, they don't have the attention spans. And so they came up with this model of how to write called Brevity, Smart Brevity. And it's basically how you write emails, how you write your newsletters, like how you put your copy on your website so that people like us today in this business landscape can consume it. So I don't know if there's anything in there that would be helpful for around like the psychology of reading, but just wanted to throw that out there because I just finished reading and it's a phenomenal book.
No, thank you. I just added it to my Amazon cart.
Yeah, it's a brilliant read. It's really easy to read. I would hope that their read would be easy using their own model, which they did. That was the first thing I wondered. I was like, did they write this in their model or not? So anyway, a good book. But it is like an interesting conundrum because we want to consume information, but we have so much information that we get information overload. So it's like this concept that just has a point of no return. But I did want to talk a little bit about your business and some of your core philosophies because I don't want to run out of time. You something that I teach my clients all the time is like behind their brand and how they make decisions is based upon their own personal philosophical beliefs, right? My business is shaped by telling stories. It's what problems can you solve? How do you put yourself into the shoes of the client so they can see the problems like you have done, and then you can address that? Would you say that in looking at how do, what would you say some of the core philosophical principles are that are guiding you through this innovation approach? I've heard you talk about insight to action, radicalized results, putting yourself in the shoe of the consumer. Now you're doing this open source concept. What other pieces would you drop into that list?
The first one that comes to mind is patriotism. I love America, and I feel like we don't have enough of an investment from the business community into the well-being of our citizens. And I think education as well, because I think that's the fundamental enabler. That is what differentiates a population from another one. It's just their root knowledge and their ability to apply it. And for me, when you fold in open source and you fold in insight to action and entrepreneurialism, all of that I believe is what founded the ethos of the American dream. And that's what motivates me more than anything, is like getting people back to believing in the American dream and having hope for our future, really creating the economic opportunity, which I think is everyone's job. I think we've left it to a couple billionaires and people with capital. And I'm not complaining about those people, but that's just how society is
Yeah.
evolving right now. It's more, I think every one of us has the right and the privilege to take advantage of the economy, but we're not taught how to do that. And we're
Yeah.
not taught how that can be efficient in our lives.
Why would that just be applicable for Americanism? This is a global tool and a global
Oh, for
economy.
sure. Oh
So
yeah, as I said, 130 countries have used it, but I lived overseas for 8 years and I learned very quickly that zero people outside of America want to hear Americans talk about their country.
100%.
They only want to hear Americans talk about America. And I'm making it free because to your point, I lived 8 years in four continents. I love everyone that I've met. We're all connected at a spiritual level, I believe, at a literally physical level, I believe. And so we're all of the earth and all that kind of stuff. I really believe that. But the conversation I have found becomes really tricky when Americans start giving advice. And so I'm being very focused on my country because it's a safe place for me to talk about, and I think to the extent that folks want to see capitalism be effective, they tend to look towards America right now. I don't think we've lost that edge, and so I feel like if we can demonstrate success here that works globally, and it's to kind of act local, think global vibe.
I like that. Regarding this open source platform and providing these tools for entrepreneurs, which by the way, it's really cool. I love that you're segmenting in a very niche population there. But what's the long-term impact you want to make with this?
I personally want to see 1 million American businesses accelerated or transformed from how do. And accelerated is 0 to 1. So I have an idea, I made it. Transformed is we have an old business and we made it new again. Dude, something like, I think it's like 50% of the S&P 500 is over 75 years old. Companies at that age pay dividends. They don't invest in innovation. And I'm not complaining about it. That's just how capital works. If we want to get more money in the pocket of employees, we want to create more wealth, we have to have companies that are either on the younger end of the life cycle, so they're issuing equity to employees and that equity becomes worth more, or we need to get older companies to feel confident reinvesting in innovation, which then causes the stock to grow and it gives them more capital to pay bonuses and living wages and benefits and things like that. And so to get that capital cycle going, right now, 93% of new products fail, 75% of transformations fail, and 50% of small businesses fail within 5 years. There's a reason people don't try to innovate and don't build new companies. It's the failure rate. Now, you look at Amazon, why do they keep growing? It's because they keep successfully innovating. So if we teach people how successful innovation works, using data, working backwards from the customer, focusing on the right mindsets, and being disciplined in our approach, we could actually transform this country.
So working backwards, reengineering, perception is reality, innovation, solving a problem. At the core of everything you do, does how do address all of those pieces?
Yes, 100%. That's why it's taken so long to do and been so insanely expensive to produce. And it's like every step of the process in how do is designed to give you the right mindset, help you collect the right data from your customer, your competition, the market, help you design the right solution, and then pick the tools. A lot of people think you have to build everything. Microsoft didn't build DOS. Bill Gates bought DOS. Then he resold it. That's how he became a billionaire, right? Larry Ellison didn't invent SQL. He stole it from he borrowed it from a white paper. Steve Jobs didn't invent the mouse or the graphical user interface or any of that. He got it from a research park. He got it from SSRI, Stanford Research Park. The foundations of the solutions for future technologies, for future billion-dollar companies, for future trillionaires, the foundations are there right now. If we use our eyeballs and look around, we can see them. They are there today. Like future technology is not going to solve our problems. Existing technology is going to solve our problems. And the people who are alive today, they are the ones who are going to use that technology to solve the problems. And so it's just about trying to help people connect the dots. And that's all I'm trying to do.
And continuing, one of the things that is the core at the center of my being is continuing to learn, because Steve Jobs,
always,
Bill Gates, all those people that you just referenced that basically borrowed other information, it's because they learned, they had access to something, they saw the problem that they could solve with it, and they had the wherewithal, they took the risks, they had whatever it is, the balls, the moxie to take that and then adapt it for their own use. So part of doing that is being able to continually learn, whether that's reading books, going to workshops, putting yourself in seminars, signing up for whatever it is. Like, you just never know where the next inspiration is going to come from. What's really cool about inspiration, innovation, and entrepreneurialism, if I may, is that if you surround yourself with other people like yourself, if you're constantly putting yourself and injecting yourself into these situations, you get to have these opportunities to have conversations with people, and you're putting yourself in that place to not only learn, but be inspired and potentially inspire yourself. You're a testimony to a lot of the things that make entrepreneurs great. I did
Thank
have a
you.
couple of questions that I've been tooling over in my own mind, and I wonder if you give me your insights. I don't use AI terribly in the sense of I know some people that are using it to literally create everything around their business, and I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't. I use it for like data and research and that sort of stuff, because I can cut the time in like literally seconds. But one of the things that I've always been, and maybe this is just me being paradoxically perplexed around it, is that how do you balance scaling a business using technology, integrating AI, whether it's chat GPT, whether it's customer service like my friend has developed? How do you integrate that but maintain that fine balance between a customer first mentality that still has that human interface?
It's a great question. I think this is a fundamental question that a lot of businesses are struggling with right now. I personally think that AI has a time and place. Currently, it's not one size fits all. It requires a lot of bespoke training. It requires a lot of management. And so if you have a business that's capable of doing that training, whether it's our reinforcement learning, whether it's retrieval augmented generation, whatever it is, if you have the time and money to actually do that and customize it for your culture, for your product, and for your customer most specifically, do it. If
Mm,
you don't, humans are more valuable right now. Now, is that true in 10 years? I don't know. Probably not for this type of conversation. But the reality is every customer touch point is either value accreting for your brand or value deleting for your brand.
mm,
And you want every customer touch point to accrue value, to accrete value. And even when your customer has a negative experience, that is an opportunity for you to prove to your customer why they should work for you.
mm.
And I feel like a lot of people, or sorry, not work for you, work with you. And that is, I feel like a lot of people want to externalize the customer interface, especially it's not fun sometimes to talk to the customer if they're pissed off and we're busy and it takes time. That's the job. If we want to be entrepreneurs, that's the actual job. And the more that we can increase the humanity of businesses and the interface with businesses, the more we build a brand. And right now, long term, the only thing that will differentiate a company is their customer relationships. When AI allows everyone to build anything quickly, what's the difference between your company and another one? It's going to be the relationship you have with the customer. And so I wouldn't rush to replace human interfaces with AI unless you're really certain that you're the king of your category, the queen of your category, the ruler, and you're not going to be displaced. Otherwise, someone could with a better interface will displace you.
Great answer, and I love the insights. You said something earlier in the conversation that I forgot to address. You sold your company, say you had access to resources, capital, et cetera, and you went out and basically you stayed in your lane because you were good at something, which by the way is something we should probably touch on, which we didn't, is recognizing if you're building a business, recognizing what you're really good at. And I know you have to be Swiss Army knives, especially if you're solopreneurs and getting started, but there are other ways to integrate outside experts, whether it's using Upwork or finding contract work to help you grow your business. You don't have to go it alone is my point. Find capital to help people. But if you were an entrepreneur and you don't have capital, you didn't sell your business or an enterprise to a target, and you don't have a lot of working capital, what would you say to early entrepreneurs that they have a great idea, they have a business model, they have something that they feel can really solve a problem, if you will, but they're not able to just stay in their lane because they're doing all these different things? Would you have any advice around that?
Yeah, I would pick the smallest number of activities that has the highest yield for creating customer value or demonstrating your concept. And working backwards from the customer, what that means is how can you solve the customer's problem or demonstrate to investors that you're capable of solving the customer's problem in a way that gives investors confidence to give you money. That's what, if you want to bootstrap it, it's a different approach. You're going to have to do everything for as long as possible. And it's more incremental, less of a J curve, much more about getting organic traction, driving organic growth, and spending every dollar very efficiently. And AI can help there. Any sort of automation can help there. It doesn't necessarily have to be AI. And then, if you're truly trying to grow a scalable, investable business, people forget that one of the biggest customers is the investor. So, like when you're building an early stage business, you have to build for your consumer, the end user, and you have to build for the people who are going to give you money. They are a customer as well. And so the more you're able to prove that you're in your own category, there's not a lot of competition, you have a unique solution and you can deliver it, then the easier it's going to be. And that's why for me, I waited 17 years of professional work before I tried. Like I've worked 17 years in a sector learning. And I spent 3 years on the idea thinking like, all right, is this going to work? And how am I going to make it work? And how am I going to ensure that I got a patent for it, right? Like I got 2 patents. And so I made sure that this thing was like defensible from an intellectual property perspective, that it could be brought to life from a technical perspective, that the business model was there, and that I was a credible person, that the investors would believe that I could do it. And that's why it was easy or easier. But yeah, I
Spending
think it's
spending 17 years. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
I think it's experience, because once you start to build your own confidence, then you can know. I think where a lot of entrepreneurs rush to market and then they flame out, as opposed to having a bit of patience, developing that experience and learning how to moderate themselves and their ideas.
Yeah, that's all good and well, and I'm not speaking from personal experience, but a lot of people don't have the patience because their very livelihood depends upon revenue coming in, and they may have gone to market too soon, to your point. They may not have stayed. I always tell people, if you have this great idea, don't quit your day job just yet, brother. Like,
No, yes.
Work this out.
Yes.
Work with small sample populations. Still have your revenue coming in. I don't care how much you hate your job. Go fucking work for Uber if you have to, but don't quit your day job until you have vetted this product. You have vetted this process. You have vetted this service. Find small sample populations that you can put it in their hands and just see, would somebody pay for this? And yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't have the patience because we live in it's crazy, man. And I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like a doomsdayer. One of the biggest failures that I see in society right now is this phone, and the fact that it has given us access to literally everything, from entertainment to information to just completely dumbing us down. And because we have access to so much, whether it's information on the web, whether it's movies on our television, like, we just have gotten away from being in love with the process and being able to have the patience to be in love with the process. Because if it doesn't, and I have 2 daughters, and I see it all the time. So I have 2 older daughters, and then my wife has 3 kids. So I actually have 5 kids now, 3 microwave popcorn kids. And the younger they are, the shorter their attention spans are, and the more they expect like immediate returns on whatever it is. And then they just walk away from it when they haven't gotten those results that they expected. And for example, my youngest, he just started playing soccer. He's 10 years old, and I was out in the yard a couple of days training with him, and I was teaching him how to juggle because I'm a soccer player. And he just gave up after 5 minutes. He's like, dude, I can't do this. And I was like, no, man, you literally have been here for 5 minutes. Take the soccer ball, and I just want you to sit here for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, set a little goal for 10 minutes. And bro, it was like 4 minutes into the 10. He's like, I just can't do it. And I'm like, man, this is why you will never be able to play soccer if you want to play soccer, because you're not willing to put the time and the energy in to become a better player. So there's a huge conversation. I don't want to go too much into that, but I did have one final question before we drop off of here. And again, thank you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing. You've dropped a lot of information. When I used to work in the corporate world like you, and when I did finally jump full time into the entrepreneurial landscape, I was blown away by really a few things. First and foremost, the fact that I was solely responsible for everything now.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's sink or fail, bro. It's either you, and I was like, I'm just going to burn the ships, because there's no fucking way I'm going back to sweaty suits sitting in a cubicle. This is just never going to happen, right? So I was like, I'm burning the ships, and this is what I'm going to do. I don't care what it is. But I remember being in, and I was probably like a year into it, and it's not always like harmony, right? There's a lot of burps and squiggly lines and U-turns. And I just remember thinking, fuck, dude, do I have what it takes to really make this work? Do I really have what it takes? But then at the same time, I remember thinking, like, I can leave and quit in the middle of the day if I wanted. I can spend time with my kids now. I can do things. Like, so there were 2 thoughts. I was like, shit, this is a lot of work, and it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. It's not that I wasn't delusional about it. I just remember thinking, damn, son, this is a lot. But I'm also remember thinking, I have freedom. This is my life now. I am fully in control. So those are my 2 didactic thoughts. When you left the safety net, we'll call it, of living under the corporate umbrella, and you jumped into this entrepreneurial landscape, what were some of your like early observations, and what enabled you to go from here to there, if you had any advice for our listeners?
I was terrified. I still am terrified. Like, I don't think that the fear goes away until in my opinion, for me, until I'm like done. Like, I've sold the company or like something like that. It's like every day.
If you don't have the terror, there's something wrong with you, to be honest with you.
100%. If you don't have the terror, you are not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Never get comfortable. There's another way to say it. It's just never get comfortable, because there's just something that's always going to pop up and cause something to occur. You always have to get comfortable with the discomfort, I guess, is a better way of saying that.
Acceptance is very powerful in that regard. Yeah, totally. But I think I felt a lot of fear. I felt a lot of excitement. But also, I felt for the first time, holy shit, I don't know what to do. It took me a couple of years to figure out, like, all right, how do I develop my own organizational cadence inside my head? There's a lot of skills I had to learn. There's a lot of new ways of working with people. Like, it's real easy when you're like, you have millions of dollars as the VP of whatever. And like, some of my budgets were like 30, $40 million a year. So it's like easy to get really high talented people to do work. So you just give them a lot of money and they do it. But in scrapping self-funding for 7 years, I've self-funded this thing for 7 years, man. I've barely taken on any revenue because I'm really just simply focused on like solving the problem. And I had to learn to reconnect with the earliest forms of my career, both in terms of what I did daily, but in terms of relating with my customer. I've talked to over 1,000 entrepreneurs one-on-one to try and make sure my course works and so that I understand my customer better than anyone on earth. And I think I can say that qualifiably now. And that took ages to get to the point where I could even have the conversation, coming from being just the kind of conversations you have with Wall Street or the board of a Fortune 50 company are different than the kind of conversations you have with people who are trying to accelerate their businesses. And so I had to relearn how to speak. I had to relearn how to approach my own work in the context of other people's work. Again, as an executive, it's very easy for me to walk into a very large room and say, go that way. That's all I need to say. And yet, if I want to help someone with their business, I have to very much hear them first, understand them, their customer, like why they're doing it, what they're doing it for, where they're at, where they need to be, and then help walk them to where they could go. Not point, but help them see where it is. And that kind of pivot in mindset was hard. And I still struggle with it daily. And for me, I agree with you. It's a lifelong journey. It's a journey of learning. And there's not a day that I feel comfortable, not a single day. But I love what I do. And my brain is so activated. And I feel happier than I would sitting in a suit in an office, just having people read reports to me.
Oh, amen. It can't be said enough. Man, we covered a lot of things today, from sweaty suits to perception as reality to radicalized results. I'm going to explore that a little bit more, I think, in the next podcast. I love what you said, value creating versus value deleting. That's a phenomenal concept and really worth considering if you're an entrepreneur. It's like, how do you show up every single day and add value, whether it's just communication with your clients? I saw something yesterday, and I posted this on Instagram. We get so caught up, and I don't even know where I saw this. The concept just prodded my brain. I think I was reading a book somewhere. And the whole idea of, we get so caught up in our day-to-day minutia of running our business, and like, how do we generate new leads, and how do we generate more revenue, and like, how do we find more clients? And the piece went on to say, the answer to this complex question is right in front of you if you already have clients. So how can you take your existing clients and nurture them so that all they ever want to do is talk about what you're doing? And the way to do that is to solve their problems, right? Because we only care about what's in it for me. Like, we don't give a shit about what you're doing behind your business. Like, I think we like to think a lot of people care about our business and what we're doing, but they really, at the end of the day, they really only care, what am I getting out of this transaction? Like, what's 100%. In this for me? So if you know that as an entrepreneur going in, you just have to reframe and get out of your own ego shadow and say, okay, what can I do for my client today that's going to make their day exceptional? Whether it's a service, whether it's an email, whether it's a communication, whether it's just a simple phone call. And I think as entrepreneurs, we forget that stuff. And I am present company included. There was a lot of cool reminders that you dropped up to us today. If people want to find you, what's the best way? Social media, website? What's the
LinkedIn? Yeah, LinkedIn or howdo.com.
I don't think we're connected on LinkedIn, so I'm going to find you today and
we'll do that.
Sort that out. Yeah. I would love to stay in touch with you, man. This has been a phenomenal conversation. And if there's anything ever I can ever do to support you, let me know, because I love what you're doing. I love how your mind works. And of course, you're just fun to have a conversation with. So let's stay connected. Any closing thoughts you'd like to leave for our listeners?
Thank you so much for having me, Deevo. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience. And yeah, if y'all are out there and you're thinking about building a business, try. But to have at least, I always say this, if you had a friend who said, I'm going to go climb Everest, and they just started walking to Everest like immediately after they said that, you would be very concerned for their well-being. And so many entrepreneurs do that with, I'm going to go build a business, and they immediately start walking towards build a business. Hang on. Why not practice climbing a mountain a couple times? And you can practice on paper, and Howdo will show you how to do that for free. Do it a couple times. And then once you have confidence, start walking.
And that's howdo.com.
Correct.
Man, this is Wesley Stringfellow on the Branding Laboratory. Wes, I really appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, if you are intrigued by innovation and you want to take your business to the next level, please check out howdo.com. That was a fantastic conversation with my boy West, and he dropped some serious insights, and I really appreciate the time and energy and just the dedication to his craft that he has put into it from one entrepreneur to another. Mad respect, bro. If you are looking to promote your brand, please, shameless plug, check my company out, The Branding Storyteller, on thebrandstoryteller.com. I had to get that right. I almost messed that up. Anyway, www.thebrandstoryteller.com. I'm Deevo, and make sure you subscribe to the show if you're watching this on YouTube so that you can get more cool shows like this. Leave us a review on Apple or below, wherever you leave reviews. I would love to get your feedback. How can we make the show better? Whatever it is, insights, maybe you have some recommendations on guests, maybe yourself can be a guest. Please join us. And if you want to follow me on social media, leave me a note or a comment, or you have some questions or recommendations, it's Deevo, the brand storyteller, on Instagram, and the same thing on LinkedIn. And again, if you're serious about growing your brand, head over to thebrandstoryteller.com and learn more about what we do for entrepreneurs, small businesses. And until next time, man, I'm Deevo. That was West Stringfellow from howdo.com. Thank you for joining us. I know you have choices when it comes to podcasts. There are a million that you can listen to, so I appreciate your time and attention to today's episode. Cheers, mate. Thanks for tuning in to the Branding Laboratory. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Connect with us on social media for more branding tips and insights. And remember, your story matters. Until next time, keep building and sharing your unique brand story. I'll see you soon.